Story 1. I work as a front desk supervisor at the Grand Vista Hotel downtown. It's a mid-range business hotel that caters to both corporate travelers and families. I've been in hospitality for 8 years now, working my way up from housekeeping to my current position. In all that time, I thought I'd seen every type of difficult guest imaginable. I was wrong. The busy conference season always brings interesting challenges. We were fully booked for 3 nights straight due to a major tech conference in town, plus several families on vacation. I was pulling double shifts to cover for a colleague who called in sick, so I was already running on fumes when she checked in. Karen arrived Thursday evening during our busiest check-in period. She had this immediately demanding presence, snapping her fingers at me while I was helping another guest, tapping her credit card impatiently on the counter, and sighing loudly every few seconds. Karen, I specifically requested a quiet room on the top floor. I hope you people actually read reservation notes. Me, of course, ma'am. I have you in room 847, which is on our 8th floor in a quieter section of the hotel. Karen, it better be quiet. I have very important business calls tomorrow morning, and I cannot deal with any disturbances. Me, I understand completely. If you have any issues at all, please don't hesitate to call the front desk. She snatched her key cards and room packet without a thank you and headed to the elevators. I made a mental note of her attitude, but didn't think much more about it. We get demanding guests all the time. The first complaint came at 9:47 p.m., just as I was helping a family with their luggage cart. Karen, there are extremely loud children in the room next to mine. Room 849. They're running around, screaming, making it impossible for me to work. Me, I'm so sorry about that. Let me call security to do a noise check and speak with the guests. Karen, don't just speak with them. Move them. I paid good money for a quiet room, and this is unacceptable. I sent our night security guard to investigate. He came back 15 minutes later looking confused. Security guard, I listened outside both rooms. The family in 849 has their TV on at normal volume, and I heard maybe some quiet conversation. Nothing that would constitute a noise complaint. The kids must be asleep. I called Karen back to let her know we'd investigated and found the noise levels to be within normal limits. Karen, that's impossible. They're being extremely loud. Your security guard is obviously incompetent. Me, ma'am, I can offer to move you to a different room if you'd prefer. Karen, why should I have to move? I'm not the one causing problems. Move them. Me, I understand your frustration, but I can't ask guests to change rooms when they're not violating any noise policies. She hung up on me. I figured that was the end of it. But at 11:23 p.m., my phone rang again. Karen, the noise is even worse now. They're having some kind of party. I demand you either move them immediately or kick them out of the hotel. This was getting ridiculous. I asked our security guard to check again, and this time I went with him. We stood outside room 849 for a full 5 minutes. The only sound was a television at low volume and what sounded like someone typing on a laptop. Me, ma'am, I personally verified that the family next door is not making excessive noise. They appear to be settling in for the evening quietly. Karen, are you calling me a liar? Me, not at all. Sometimes sound can travel in unexpected ways in hotels. I'd be happy to move you to room 823, which is at the other end of the hall. Karen, I'm not moving. They need to move or leave. I have a conference presentation at 8 a.m., and I need my sleep. She hung up again. I updated the night manager about the situation and went back to helping other guests. Friday morning brought 3 more calls before 7 a.m. Each time, Karen demanded the family be removed from the hotel. Each time, we verified they were being quiet. The father was actually in the hallway at 6:30 and talking softly on his phone, clearly being considerate of other guests. When I saw Karen at checkout on Friday morning, she marched straight to my desk. Karen, I want to speak to your manager immediately. Your staff's incompetence ruined my entire stay. My manager came out, and Karen launched into this dramatic story about how the family next door had partied all night, how we refused to help her, and how she deserved compensation for her terrible experience. Manager: Ma'am, our records show we investigated your noise complaints multiple times and found no violations. We offer to relocate you to a different room. Karen: I shouldn't have to move because of other people's badly behaved children. Those kids were running around screaming until midnight. That's when the father from room 849 approached the desk with his family. His two kids, maybe 8 and 10 years old, were quietly wheeling their small suitcases behind him. Father: excuse me, I'm checking out of room 849. I just wanted to mention that my family really appreciated how respectful and quiet the hotel has been. My kids went to bed at 8:30 last night, and we all slept wonderfully. Karen whirled around and pointed at him. Karen: your children were screaming and running around all night. You ruined my stay. The father looked genuinely confused. Father: I'm sorry, but I think there's been a mistake. My kids were asleep by 8:30, and my wife and I just watched a movie quietly and went to bed around 10. We specifically chose this hotel because we wanted a family-friendly place where we could be respectful to other guests. Karen: don't lie to me, I heard them. Father: sir, is there security footage of the hallway? Because I can prove my children never left our room after 7 p.m. when we came back from dinner. My manager pulled up our hallway camera system on his tablet. The footage clearly showed the family returning at 7:03 p.m. and not leaving their room again until this morning. Karen: that footage is fake. You're all conspiring against me. The father pulled out his phone and started recording. Father: ma'am, my children are standing right here. As you can see, they're very well-behaved kids. We spent last evening quietly in our room, and you're accusing us of something that simply didn't happen. Karen: stop filming me. I'll call the police. Father: I'm filming in a public area because you're making false accusations about my family. For the record, this is Friday morning at the Grand Vista Hotel, and this woman is claiming my sleeping children kept her awake all night. That's when Karen completely lost it. She started screaming about how the father was probably lying about his children's bedtime, how hotel staff was incompetent, and how she was going to make sure we all got fired. Karen: I'm posting reviews everywhere. I'm calling corporate. This hotel will regret treating me this way. Father: actually, I think I'll be the one posting about this experience. I run a travel blog with about 800,000 followers, and this is exactly the kind of behavior that gives travelers a bad reputation. Karen's face went white. Karen: you can't post anything about me without my permission. Father: I can absolutely share my experience at this hotel, including how staff handled a false noise complaint against my family. The father finished checking out and left with his family. Karen continued her tirade for another 10 minutes before finally storming out, threatening to sue everyone involved. I didn't think much more about it until my manager called me on Saturday morning. Manager: have you seen social media today? That travel blogger posted about yesterday's incident. The father's video and blog post had gone viral. He had posted the footage of Karen screaming accusations at his quiet, well-behaved children, along with a detailed account of how hotel staff had repeatedly investigated her false complaints. The post was titled, "When Karen's Attack, A Family's Hotel Horror Story." The comments were brutal. Thousands of people were sharing their own stories about entitled travelers who target families. Our hotel was getting praise for how professionally we handled the situation, but people were also asking why we didn't ban Karen immediately. By Sunday, the post had been shared over 50,000 times. Local news outlets picked up the story. Our corporate office was getting calls from reporters asking about our policies regarding guest harassment. Monday morning, I arrived at work to find our general manager in crisis mode. General Manager, corporate wants a full report on the Karen incident. The travel blogger's post is everywhere, and we need to make a public statement. We spent the morning reviewing security footage, noise complaint logs, and witness statements from staff. Everything confirmed that the family had been quiet and respectful, while Karen had made multiple false complaints and harassed both staff and guests. Tuesday afternoon, our hotel posted an official response on social media. We apologized to the travel blogger's family for the harassment they experienced from another guest. We publicly stated that the family had been exemplary guests who followed all hotel policies. We also announced that we were implementing stricter policies about guest-on-guest harassment. The post also mentioned that we had permanently banned the guest who made false complaints and created a hostile environment for other families. We offered the travel blogger's family a complimentary weekend stay whenever they were back in town. The response got thousands of positive comments. People praised us for standing up to entitled behavior and protecting families. Several travel bloggers said they'd choose our hotel specifically because of how we handled the situation. I found out later that Karen had indeed tried to post negative reviews on every travel site she could find. But once the story went viral, those sites flagged her reviews as potentially false. Her social media accounts got flooded with people calling out her behavior. The travel blogger accepted our offer for a return stay and brought his family back 2 months later. His kids remembered me from the front desk and drew me pictures of the hotel. He posted another video about his return visit, praising our staff and talking about how sometimes standing up to bullies makes everyone's experience better. Karen tried calling our corporate office several times, threatening legal action and demanding we remove our social media post. Corporate legal reviewed everything and told her she had no case. Her false complaints were documented. Her harassment of guests was witnessed by multiple staff members, and her behavior was recorded by the victim. The whole incident taught me that sometimes the guests who scream the loudest about being mistreated are actually the ones doing the mistreating. Karen thought she could bully a quiet family and intimidate hotel staff into doing whatever she wanted. Instead, she picked on someone with a platform who could share the truth with hundreds of thousands of people. Our hotel still gets positive mentions from that incident. We frame it as an example of standing up for families and refusing to let entitled guests ruin other people's experiences. Sometimes the best customer service means protecting good guests from bad ones. Story 2. I've been working as the activities coordinator at Sunset Manor Nursing Home for 12 years. In that time, I've seen plenty of difficult family members, but nothing prepared me for what happened last month with one particular visitor. I should start by explaining how our facility works. We take the safety and well-being of our residents very seriously. Everyone who enters has to sign in at the front desk, and we have strict policies about what can and cannot be brought into the building. Pets are only allowed under very specific circumstances. They need to be registered therapy animals with proper documentation, up-to-date vaccinations, and approval from our medical staff. The trouble started on a Thursday afternoon. I was in the main common room helping residents with a craft project when I heard a commotion from the lobby. There was a woman's voice getting louder and more demanding by the minute. I walked over to see what was happening and found a blonde woman in her 40s arguing with our receptionist. Behind her was the biggest dog I'd ever seen inside our facility, a massive Great Dane that had to weigh at least 150 pounds. Receptionist: "Ma'am, as I've explained, we need to see documentation for any service animal before it can enter the building." Karen: "This is my emotional support animal, and you're discriminating against me. I have rights." Me: "Excuse me, is there something I can help with?" Karen: "Finally, someone with authority. This girl is trying to prevent me from visiting my mother with my emotional support dog." I looked at the massive animal, which was already sniffing around the lobby and had knocked over a small decorative plant with its tail. Me: "I understand you'd like to visit with your dog, but we do need to see proper documentation. What's your mother's name?" Karen: "Her name is Eleanor, and she's in room 237, and I don't need documentation. Emotional support animals are protected under federal law." I knew Eleanor well. She was a sweet lady who'd been with us for about 6 months. She'd mentioned her daughter before, but never in flattering terms. Me, ma'am, emotional support animals don't have the same access rights as trained service animals. For the safety of our residents, we need to see vaccination records and certification. Karen, that's discrimination. I'm going to sue this place into the ground. My dog has every right to be here. The Great Dane had wandered over to the main common room, where several elderly residents were still working on their crafts. I could see them looking nervous. Some of our residents have mobility issues and can be easily knocked down. Me, ma'am, I'm going to need you to control your dog while we sort this out. Karen, he's perfectly trained. He's not bothering anyone. Just as she said that, the dog bumped into one of our residents, an 82-year-old man named Frank who was walking with his walker. Frank stumbled and would have fallen if another resident hadn't caught him. Frank, what the heck? Get that horse out of here. Karen, he barely touched you. You're being dramatic. I immediately went to check on Frank while keeping an eye on the dog. That's when I noticed the animal had something in its mouth. Me, ma'am, your dog has something. What is that? I got closer and realized with horror that the Great Dane was chewing on what looked like a hearing aid. One of our residents, Mrs. Patterson, was frantically patting around her ear. Mrs. Patterson, my hearing aid, where's my hearing aid? The dog had somehow grabbed Mrs. Patterson's hearing aid right out of her ear and was now treating it like a chew toy. Me, stop, drop it. I tried to get the hearing aid away from the dog, but it had already been crushed between those massive jaws. Pieces of plastic and electronic components scattered across the floor. Mrs. Patterson started crying. Those hearing aids cost thousands of dollars, and she was on a fixed income. Karen, it's not my fault your residents can't keep track of their stuff. Maybe they shouldn't leave things lying around. Me, that hearing aid was in her ear. Your dog took it right out of her ear. Karen, prove it. You can't prove anything. At this point, I'd had enough. I called for our director while trying to calm down the residents who were now clearly upset and frightened. Our director arrived within minutes. She took one look at the situation, the knocked-over plant, Frank still shaken from nearly falling, Mrs. Patterson crying over her destroyed hearing aid, and the Great Dane now investigating a trash can, and immediately took charge. Director, ma'am, I need you and your animal to leave the premises immediately. Karen, you can't kick me out. I'm visiting my mother, and this is discrimination against people with disabilities. Director, this animal is not properly documented, has already caused property damage, and has endangered our residents. You need to leave now. Karen, I'm calling my lawyer. This is a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I'll sue this place for everything it's worth. Director, I'm calling the police. Your animal has caused injury to a resident and destroyed personal property. Karen, you wouldn't dare. I know my rights. But our director was already on the phone. While we waited for the police to arrive, Karen continued her tirade about discrimination and lawsuits. The Great Dane, meanwhile, had found someone's purse and was trying to get into it. When the police arrived, Karen immediately started telling them how we were discriminating against her and violating federal law. Police officer, ma'am, do you have documentation showing this is a trained service animal? Karen, it's an emotional support animal. I don't need special training documentation. Police officer, emotional support animals don't have public access rights like service animals do. Private facilities can set their own policies. Karen, that's not true. You don't know what you're talking about. The officer was very patient, but Karen kept interrupting and arguing. That's when our director played her trump card. Director, officer, I think you should see this. She pulled out her tablet and showed him footage from our security cameras. We have cameras throughout the common areas for safety purposes. The video clearly showed the Great Dane bumping into Frank, then grabbing Mrs. Patterson's hearing aid directly from her ear. The officer watched the footage, then looked at Karen. Police officer, ma'am, your animal has caused injury to a resident and destroyed personal property. The facility is within its rights to ban you from the premises. Karen, that video is fake. They probably edited it. Director, officer, we're also concerned about the well-being of this animal. It's clearly not trained for public access, and bringing an untrained large dog into a facility with elderly residents shows poor judgment regarding animal care. The officer nodded and called animal control. Karen's face went white. Karen, you can't take my dog. He hasn't done anything wrong. Animal control officer, ma'am, we need to evaluate whether this animal is properly cared for and suitable for the role you're claiming it serves. Bringing an untrained large dog into a nursing home could be considered negligent endangerment. They didn't take the dog away immediately, but they did issue Karen a citation and told her the animal would need to be evaluated. If the dog wasn't properly trained as claimed, there could be additional consequences. Karen was officially banned from the facility. If she wanted to visit her mother, she'd have to do it without her emotional support Great Dane. The whole incident cost her more than just visitation rights. Mrs. Patterson's family pressed charges for the destroyed hearing aid, which cost over $3,000 to replace. Frank's family also filed a complaint about the near-fall incident. But the real kicker came a few days later. It turned out Karen had been posting on social media about how she was being discriminated against, complete with photos of her dog and claims about her disability rights. Someone who knew her personally commented that she'd gotten the dog just 2 weeks earlier from a newspaper ad and had never mentioned having any kind of disability before. The animal control investigation revealed that not only was the dog not trained as an emotional support animal, but Karen had forged some kind of certificate she'd printed off the internet. The Great Dane was a sweet dog, but completely untrained and actually belonged to her ex-boyfriend, who had been looking for it. The ex-boyfriend got his dog back, and Karen faced charges for fraud and theft in addition to the property damage claims. Elena, her mother, was mortified when she found out what happened. She actually apologized to the staff on behalf of her daughter and made sure Mrs. Patterson's hearing aid was replaced through her own insurance. Elena, I raised her better than this, I swear. I don't know where I went wrong. The whole incident became a teaching moment for our staff about the difference between legitimate service animals and people trying to abuse the system. We also updated our policies to make it crystal clear what documentation is required and what the consequences are for violations. I felt bad for the dog more than anything. That poor Great Dane had no idea he was being used as a prop in someone's entitled behavior. At least he ended up back with his real owner, who actually knew how to take care of him properly. As for Karen, she's permanently banned from our facility. Elena gets visits from other family members now, and she seems much more relaxed without having to worry about what her daughter might do next. It's amazing how some people think claiming disability rights gives them a free pass to do whatever they want, even when it puts vulnerable people at risk. Real service animals undergo years of training specifically to avoid the kind of chaos Karen's dog caused in just 20 minutes. Story 3. I've been working in the accounting department at our mid-sized company for about 3 years now. It's actually a pretty decent job, good benefits, reasonable hours, and most of my coworkers are normal people. I started here right after college when I was drowning in student loans and needed something stable. The company takes safety pretty seriously, which I appreciate. We get regular training on everything from fire evacuation procedures to workplace harassment prevention. So when they announced mandatory CPR certification for all employees, I didn't think much of it. Seemed like a smart thing to learn. The training was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon in our main conference room. They brought in a certified instructor from the Red Cross, a nice older guy who seemed to know his stuff. He had set up 3 CPR training dummies on tables around the room, the standard plastic torsos that every workplace training uses. Most of us filtered in around 2 o'clock, chatting casually and grabbing seats. I sat with a few people from my department, and we were all pretty relaxed about the whole thing. Then she walked in. I'd worked with her for about 2 years, and she always had this way of making everything about herself. She was one of those people who complained constantly, but never actually did anything to fix problems. Always had an excuse for why things weren't her fault. The instructor started with the basics, explaining when to perform CPR, how to check for responsiveness, calling for help. Pretty standard stuff. Then he moved on to the hands-on portion. Instructor: all right, everyone, let's practice chest compressions. I want you to find a partner and take turns on the dummies. That's when Karen raised her hand. Karen: excuse me, but I'm not comfortable with this dummy. Instructor: is there a problem with the equipment? Everything should be sanitized and ready to go. Karen: well, for starters, it's obviously been used by other people. That's disgusting. But more importantly, this is clearly a male torso, and I'm not comfortable putting my mouth on a male dummy. The room went completely silent. I could see people exchanging glances, trying to figure out if she was serious. Instructor: ma'am, these are standard training mannequins. They're designed to be gender neutral for CPR practice. Karen: gender neutral? Look at it. It's obviously male. The chest is flat and masculine. I'm a married woman, and I'm not going to compromise my values by performing mouth-to-mouth on a male figure, even if it's plastic. My coworker next to me whispered under his breath that he couldn't believe what he was hearing. The instructor was clearly trying to stay professional. Instructor: I understand your concerns, but these are the industry standard training tools. They're specifically designed for CPR instruction. Karen: then get me a different one. Surely you have female dummies? Something more appropriate? Instructor: ma'am, I only brought what's standard for workplace training. These mannequins are used by hospitals, fire departments, and emergency responders everywhere. Karen: well, that's not my problem. I'm paying good money for this certification through my employer, and I expect proper equipment. This dummy is dirty and inappropriate. She was getting louder, and I could see other people starting to look uncomfortable. The instructor was clearly trying to keep things moving. Instructor: the mannequins are properly sanitized between uses. If you're concerned about hygiene, we have individual mouth guards for the rescue breathing portion. Karen: it's not just about hygiene, it's about respect. I'm not kissing some male dummy, and I'm certainly not pressing on its chest like that. It's completely inappropriate. The instructor looked around the room, probably hoping someone would help him out, but we were all just staring in disbelief. Instructor: ma'am, CPR is a life-saving technique. In a real emergency, you wouldn't have the luxury of choosing the gender of the person who needs help. Karen: don't lecture me about emergencies. I know what emergencies are. But this is training, and I have standards. Either get me a prettier, female dummy, or I'm not participating. Instructor: I'm sorry, but I don't have different equipment. This is what we use for all our certifications. That's when Karen completely lost it. Karen: this is ridiculous. I'm not wasting my time with substandard equipment. This whole thing is a joke. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. Karen: I'm reporting this to HR. This instructor is discriminating against me because of my religious beliefs. This company is going to hear about this. Instructor: ma'am, if you leave now, you won't receive your certification. Karen: I don't care. I'm not compromising my values for some stupid piece of paper. She slammed the door so hard that the windows rattled. The rest of us just sat there in stunned silence for a moment. Instructor: well, that was unusual. Let's continue with the training. The rest of the session went smoothly. We all learned proper CPR technique, practiced on the dummies without any drama, and got our certifications. I actually felt good about learning something that could potentially save someone's life. 2 days later, I was getting coffee in the break room when I overheard a conversation between our HR manager and Karen's supervisor. HR manager: she what? She refused to complete the mandatory training? Supervisor walked out in the middle of it. Said the equipment was inappropriate. HR manager: the CPR dummies. The same ones we've used for 5 years. Supervisor: Apparently, they were too masculine for her comfort level. HR manager, well, the certification is mandatory. She'll need to retake it, or it's a disciplinary issue. I tried not to smile as I walked back to my desk. The next week, there was another CPR training session scheduled. This time, it was just for the few people who had missed the first one or needed to retake it. Karen was required to attend. But here's the thing, because of scheduling conflicts, they combined it with a makeup session for our entire department. So instead of quietly retaking the class with a few strangers, Karen had to do it in front of all of us who had already passed. When she walked into the conference room and saw all of us there, her face went bright red. "Karen, why is everyone here? I thought this was just a makeup session." "Supervisor, it is. Several people from our department needed to retake various certifications, so we combined them. It was the same instructor with the same dummies." Karen sat in the back corner, clearly hoping no one would notice her. When it came time for the hands-on portion, she reluctantly approached one of the dummies. The instructor was professional about it, but I could see her hands shaking as she performed the chest compressions. When it came time for the rescue breathing, she looked like she was about to cry. "Instructor, remember, you can use the mouth guard if you're more comfortable with that." Karen grabbed the mouth guard and barely touched her lips to it before pulling away quickly. "Karen, is that enough?" "Instructor, you need to create a proper seal and give 2 full breaths." She tried again, but it was obvious she was rushing through it just to get done. The instructor had to correct her technique multiple times. Finally, she completed the certification, but not before everyone in our department had witnessed her struggle with the same equipment she'd called inappropriate the week before. After the class, she hurried out without making eye contact with anyone. I heard later that she got a formal write-up in her file for failing to complete mandatory training on the first attempt. The best part? Word spread through the office about her male dummy complaint. Now, whenever someone mentions CPR training, people start snickering. She's become the office joke, and she did it to herself. I still see her in the hallways, but she won't look at me or anyone else who was in that training. She created her own embarrassment by making a big deal out of nothing, and now she has to live with being known as the person who was afraid to give CPR to a plastic torso. Sometimes I wonder what she'd do in a real emergency. But honestly, I hope I never find out. Story 4. I've been working at the downtown farmers market for about 2 years now, helping my uncle run his organic produce stand. It's usually pretty peaceful work selling fresh vegetables to families and local restaurant owners who come by early in the morning. But last Saturday, I witnessed something that still makes me shake my head. My uncle started this business 15 years ago after he lost his job at the factory. He'd always grown vegetables in his backyard, so he figured why not try to make some money from it. The farmer's market was perfect because the rent for a stall was cheap, and he could sell directly to customers without dealing with grocery store middlemen. I started helping him out during college to earn some extra money. After I graduated, I couldn't find work in my field right away, so I've been working there full-time while I job hunt. It's honest work, and I've gotten to know most of the regular customers and other vendors pretty well. The farmer's market has about 20 different stalls. There's my uncle's produce stand, a few other vegetable vendors, someone who sells fresh bread, a guy who makes honey, and this one vendor who brings fresh eggs from his chicken farm about an hour outside the city. The egg vendor is this older guy who everyone calls Pops. Super friendly, always has stories about his chickens, and his eggs are honestly the best I've ever tasted. Last Saturday started out normal. It was around 9 a.m., and the market was getting busy with the weekend crowd. Pops had set up his usual spot 2 stalls down from us. But I noticed he didn't have as many egg cartons as usual. Normally he'd have these huge stacks of cartons, but this time he only had maybe 20 cartons total. I walked over during a slow moment to say hi and ask what was up. Me, "Hey Pops, light delivery today." Pops, "Yeah, had some trouble with foxes getting into the coop this week. Lost about half my laying hens. Won't be back to normal production for at least a month. Me, that sucks, man. Sorry to hear that. Pops, it is what it is. That's why I put up the sign today. He pointed to a handwritten sign that said, "Limit 2 cartons per customer due to low supply." Pops, figure this way more people can get some instead of the first few customers buying me out completely. Made sense to me. I went back to my stall and continued helping customers. The morning was going smoothly until around 10:30, when I heard shouting coming from Pop's direction. I looked over and saw this middle-aged woman with short blonde hair standing in front of his stall. She was wearing expensive-looking workout clothes and had this huge designer purse slung over her shoulder. She was pointing aggressively at the egg cartons. "Karen, this is ridiculous. I've been coming here for 3 years. 3 years. I should get priority over these random people who probably just discovered this place last week." Pops, ma'am, I understand you're a regular customer and I appreciate your business, but I only have so many eggs today, and I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to buy some. Karen, I need 6 cartons. I'm hosting a brunch tomorrow for 12 people. I already planned the whole menu around having enough eggs. Pops, I'm sorry, but the limit is 2 cartons per customer today. You're welcome to come back next week when I should have more supply. Karen, come back next week. Do you have any idea how much money I spend here? I probably single-handedly keep this market in business. I could see other customers starting to gather around, watching the scene unfold. Pops looked uncomfortable, but was standing his ground. Pops, I really am sorry, but the limit applies to everyone today. I can't make exceptions. Karen, this is discrimination. You're discriminating against loyal customers. I'm going to report this market to the city. At this point, she was getting really loud. Other vendors were starting to look over, and a small crowd of shoppers had formed around the egg stand. Pops, ma'am, it's not discrimination. It's just a supply issue. Everyone gets the same limit. Karen, fine, I'll take my 2 cartons then. But I'm never shopping here again. She slammed a $20 bill down on his table and grabbed 2 cartons. I thought that was the end of it, but as she was walking away, she suddenly turned around and marched back to the stall. Before Pops could react, she grabbed 4 more cartons and took off running toward the parking lot. Karen, I'm taking what I deserve. Sue me. The whole thing happened so fast that Pops just stood there for a second, stunned. But she hadn't counted on Tom, the vendor who sells artisan bread from the stall right next to the market entrance. Tom is this quiet guy in his 60s who usually keeps to himself. What most people don't know is that he's a retired police officer who worked narcotics for 25 years before he started baking bread as a hobby. As Karen was running past his stall with the stolen eggs, Tom calmly stepped out from behind his table and positioned himself right in her path. Tom, ma'am, I'm going to need you to stop right there. Karen, get out of my way. I paid for these. She tried to push past him, but Tom grabbed her arm and spun her around with this smooth, practiced motion. The next thing I knew, Karen was face down on the ground with Tom's knee in her back, still clutching the egg cartons. Tom, I'm a retired police officer, and you're under citizen's arrest for theft. Karen, let me go. This is assault. Help. Someone help me. But instead of helping her, the crowd of shoppers that had gathered started clapping and cheering. Someone even started recording with their phone. Random shopper, about time someone dealt with her. She's been rude to vendors here for months. Another shopper, I saw the whole thing. She stole those eggs. Tom kept Karen pinned while someone called the actual police. She was screaming about lawsuits and police brutality, but Tom just calmly explained what had happened to anyone who would listen. Tom, I witnessed this woman steal merchandise from another vendor after being told about purchase limits. She took 6 cartons when the limit was clearly posted as 2 per customer. When the police arrived about 10 minutes later, they already knew Tom from his years on the force. They took statements from Pops, Tom, and several witnesses who had seen the whole thing. The funniest part was when they were putting Karen in the police car. She was still yelling about being a regular customer and how unfairly she was being treated. "Karen, this is all a misunderstanding. I was just taking what I deserved. I spend more money here than anyone." One of the officers, "Ma'am, even if you spent $1 million here, you can't just take merchandise without paying for it. That's called stealing." As they drove away with Karen in the back seat, the crowd of shoppers actually started applauding again. Several people came over to check on Pops and make sure he was okay. "Customer, are you all right? That was crazy." "Pops, I'm fine, just shaken up a bit. In 15 years of doing this, I've never had anyone actually steal from me before." Tom walked over and handed Pops the 4 stolen egg cartons, which had somehow survived Karen's tackle without breaking. "Tom, here you go. No harm done to the merchandise." "Pops, thank you so much. I can't believe you just tackled her like that." "Tom, 25 years as a cop. You don't forget how to take down someone who's running from a crime scene." The rest of the day, people kept coming up to our stalls talking about what had happened. Word spread quickly through the market, and Tom became something of a local hero. Several customers who had never bought his bread before made sure to stop by his stall. About 2 hours later, one of the police officers came back to get some additional information from Pops. He told us that Karen had been charged with petty theft and disturbing the peace. Apparently, when they ran her information, they found out she had 2 previous incidents of similar behavior at other businesses around town. "Officer, she's got a history of this kind of thing. Grocery store incident last month, and something at a restaurant before that. Always the same story, claims she's being discriminated against when she doesn't get special treatment." The best part of the whole thing, Pops sold out of his remaining eggs within an hour of the incident. People kept coming by saying they heard about what happened and wanted to support him. He ended up taking orders from about 15 customers for next week, when his supply would be back to normal. Tom got a bunch of new customers too. Turns out people really appreciate vendors who stand up for each other. The following week, Karen was nowhere to be seen at the farmers market. Some of the other vendors mentioned they'd heard she was banned from the market for 6 months as part of her plea deal. Pops brought his full supply of eggs that Saturday, and business was better than ever. He even made a new sign that said, "Thanks for your patience during our supply shortage back to normal." As for Tom, he just went back to quietly selling his bread like nothing had happened. But now everyone knows not to mess with the vendors at our farmers market. We've got a retired cop watching our backs.